How are we doing, everybody? Welcome into the SFS channel. In this episode, I'll be breaking down 5 of my wide receivers that I'll be sitting here for Week 6 NFL games. As always, if you have questions about your specific fantasy football roster and who you should start or sit this week, whether it's quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, kickers, defenses, whatever it is, put it in the comment section down below. I'm happy to get back to you guys and let you know my thoughts on your rosters and lineups for this week's games. And as always, if you're new around here, feel free to drop down and click the subscribe button as well. We're moving past or hopefully close to the 5,000 subscriber marker here on the channel, and I'm super appreciative of all of you guys that have contributed to the channel here and made this a fun and interactive community for everyone. So thanks so much, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. Man, so every week when taking a look at these wide receivers, there is such a great difference in the amount of players and situational matchups that I love as compared to the players that I dislike in given games. So the ratio essentially of guys I want to start versus sit. This position group is so loaded. There's so much talent being infused into this National Football League here over the past few seasons that there are immense amounts of wideouts that you could start in a given week and get reliable production from. Now, as always, what we do to start out these videos, we recap our picks from the previous week here. We had ourselves a dang good week of must-sit players, going 8 of 10 overall between the running backs and wide receivers, respectively. Now, that's an 80% conversion ratio. The receivers here were the group that we went 3 of 5 from in the past week's game, so a 60% marker, which is kind of our bar that we set for ourselves overall in terms of, each week we want to be going above 50% here. Now, I will apologize straight up here. Our 2 misses last week were absolutely atrocious. Starting out with the uglier of the 2, we had Gabe Davis. I was still skeptical about the ankle injury and the fact that in a game where they were 14-point favorites, if they blew that Pittsburgh team out, seeing him have 6 or fewer targets every week, I was like, hey, if he doesn't get the looks he needs early, he ain't going to get the job done. And sure enough, he was the biggest contributor to the 35-point blowout that we saw in that matchup, having 160 yards off of 2 catches. They both went for touchdowns. So a 98 and 62-yarder respectively, and another, 11-yard catch on the day. He actually had a 3rd touchdown broken up in the end zone as well by Levi Wallace, a former Bill. So crazy stuff there. Again, apologize for that terrible miss. He looks healthy, let's say that. And then our other one was DK Metcalf. Had him on the bust radar for a Marshawn Lattimore matchup where he tends to thrive against physical wide receivers, bump them up, rough them up there down the field, and give them a run for their money. And sure enough, Scott Hansen comes flashing on one of my 4 TVs I have up on Sunday afternoon, and I see the Seahawks have the ball, and I'm like, son of a gun. They were at midfield, and I see Paulson Adebo, not Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo lined up on DK Metcalf. Geno Smith scrambles around the pocket, and somehow like Adebo falls down during the route combo, and DK scores a 50-yard touchdown, and that's basically wraps for that prediction. So 2 very bad misses overall, though. We did go 8 of 10, so proud about that. But into our sits here for Week 6 fantasy football. DJ Moore kicking things off here on the road at Los Angeles. Now, on paper, based off of game script, we do talk about game script quite often here because of the fact that it's indicative of the ways that Vegas, the wise guys, expect these games to play out. Carolina, because of the fact that, it's ridiculous that Baker Mayfield represents points for this team, but I think that because they're having a backup quarterback, all of their quarterbacks are really backup quarterbacks, but they're transitioning from Baker to PJ Walker this week. The Panthers today, when I'm recording this episode, are 10.5-point underdogs at Los Angeles, which is really not a strong home stadium for any team. So the fact that they're such large favorites here is a bit puzzling to me. But the key number that we also take a look at is the over and under totals. So collectively, the points that are expected to be scored between these 2 teams. That number is set at 42, which is the second lowest of the week to the Chicago Bears and Washington Commanders on Thursday night. So personally, I think this is going to be a disastrous, corner TV game that you're barely watching because it's going to be a defensive, I don't even want to call it like a showdown. It's just going to be sloppy offensive football. The pass rush of the Panthers is going to put Matthew Stafford on his bum, probably force a couple fumbles, put him on his back a few times, and then vice versa. You're going to have PJ Walker running from Aaron Donald for his life, and probably having some turnovers along the way because he just hasn't been playing football and is playing a strong secondary led by Jalen Ramsey. So this is just a stay away for me. And the sole fact that DJ's had an underwhelming season to this point in the year is a guy that has just one double-digit target game on the season. It's odd to say that going from Baker to PJ is a downgrade. Like, if some of you wants to argue in the comment section below that it's actually an upgrade, I'm not really going to fight you on that, because Baker has been so atrocious to this point that, it's really derailed DJ's season here and made him a flat-out bust in the third round this year. But on the other side of things here, it is PJ Walker. He's the backup quarterback for a reason. Whether there's, political stuff behind this in terms of Matt Rule giving up draft compensation to get Baker, and that's really why he's starting here. He's not going to bench a guy in favor of someone that was an undrafted. I think he was not the USFL. I forget where PJ came from. He was like a MVP candidate before that league got shut down. But besides the point here, I just think that this is a rough, shaky situation. The bad gets even worse here for DJ Moore, and is once again not a flex lineup caliber player, even with two teams on bye this week. Jeudy, Denver taking on Los Angeles on Monday Night Football. Another stay away for me here. Game script's not something I worry about too much. What I do worry about is Russell Wilson's throwing arm. For a guy that has definitely had a noticeable regression on film in his deep ball passing ability, Jeudy being the bigger play threat over the top of the defense and not the guy who's been leading the team in volume like we expected this year, that's a problem for me. With the PRP injection into his throwing shoulder, the fact that we saw last week, I keep referencing this one play, but it was a throw up the seam. It was a vertical throw that we saw Russ just not put enough, mustard on the ball. And it kind of, veers to the right a little bit and just doesn't land on target. So you're seeing time after time these noticeable issues with his throwing motion right now. We now have an understanding of why. He had that injection, hopefully to reduce inflammation and pain, to make that a little bit better. But playing less than 100%, Nathaniel Hackett says he should be out there. He should be out there. Will he be out there? If he's not out there, I'm definitely not starting Jeudy. It's just a risky situation. I think that Jerry's ceiling definitely takes a hit after this. And for a guy that hasn't had the best and most stable floor to this point in the year, that becomes a problem for me as well. This Chargers defense also has two very solid corners, Asante Samuel Jr. and J.C. Jackson. So staying away from it in this matchup, not trusting Russell Wilson in this game. Jerry is coming off of his season high 8 targets here in week 5, but still, again, looking to stay clear. Allen Lazard, New York, traveling on the road to play the Green Bay Packers. Now, on paper, this doesn't look like a super stingy matchup for Lazard and the Packers here. However, the Jets are just 17th against the opposing fantasy wide receiver, so it does seem like there's some value to be had here. But Allen Lazard's production to this point in the year seems a bit skewed and unsustainable to me. If we take a look at what he's done so far, he has 100-yard game against the New England Patriots. Outside of that, in the 3 games he's played, the 4 total, the 3 not counting that 100-yard performance, he's had 45 or fewer yards in each of those contests, but he scored a touchdown in all 3 of them. So getting bailed out with a 6-point play to really, inflate those numbers above what they really should be. Additionally, this Green Bay offense just does not have the juice to score a ton of points here. They're not moving the football in the passing game super effectively and being super efficient. And of course, this is a run-first football team this year as well. So I see limitations for Lazard. Sauce Gardner's in this matchup. I don't expect him to respect Lazard in the sense of shadowing him around this game, but don't expect Allen Lazard to get open versus him. That's the message I have, is the fact that, last week, the potentially game-tying touchdown that got batted down, Aaron decided to force the ball to Lazard, who was absolutely blanketed in coverage. Like, he's a nice player. He's probably the top dog in this team, or on this team still to this day. I think Dubs is eventually the alpha for this team, but we see in critical moments where Aaron wants to go with the football. This past week, he did go to Dubs in the big game against New England as well, I guess, to potentially win that game in regulation, but the point being here is that the volume is not sustainable enough. The production outside of touchdown scoring has not been reliable enough. And if he doesn't get that touchdown in this matchup, I think that the floor is very low and the ceiling is also very low. Like, if he scores that touchdown, you're talking 11, 12 points maybe, versus if he doesn't score the touchdown, maybe like 4.5 points here. So he's been a lineup-worthy play every single week this season. I just think there are, the writing is kind of on the wall for that production to cease here going forward. Drake London, San Francisco taking on Atlanta in the stadium of the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, the Falcons are the home team here. However, I've officially decided to raise my level of concern with Atlanta's passing offense here after last week having no Kyle Pitts on the field, and the fact that I expected Drake to step up, have a double-digit target game, and really assert himself as a alpha for this offense last week in a game where they had to pass late and come back from behind to potentially secure a victory, which we all know the controversial roughing the passer call here. But for a guy who has had 6 or more targets each week of the year, again, is clearly the best wide receiver on this team, had his top target competition out of the lineup for week 5. He didn't get the job done. Marcus Mariota's completed 20 passes in one contest this year. Everything else below that is very underwhelming in terms of his ability to produce for others. Of course, Drake London being a dependent player here at the wide receiver position. And the fact that the matchup here, San Francisco, is the #1 scoring defense in the National Football League, in addition to being 6th against fantasy football wide receivers. So it's a stingy matchup with a less than optimal overall offensive situation that I think limits his upside in terms of a week-to-week basis here. So looking to stay cautious and a little bit clear of Drake London here against San Francisco, although the game script should once again favor them, and San Francisco is a bit dinged up on the defensive side of the ball. And then last but not least here, T. Higgins. Now, a quick disclaimer to start out this take here. Cincinnati traveling on the road at New Orleans to play the Saints. If T. Higgins logs 2 full practices this week consecutively before kickoff here, I will rescind this take. Ankle injuries have been a bugger, and that's been ever so evident here throughout the first month or so of the season. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, how he was impacted in week 3 after sustaining that injury, missing week 4, and then week 5 coming back and putting up an absolute dud. Look at Gabe Davis, missing week 2 with his ankle injury, coming back weeks 3 and 4, fighting through it, not getting the job done. T. Higgins has an ankle injury, plays 10 snaps on Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens this past week. Never seen again or heard from in that contest after that injury really started to bother him. So ankles are a big deal. Hamstrings also a big deal. You cannot cut. You cannot turn. You cannot be explosive, getting in and out of your breaks and play up to your full potential if that is the case here. So this is less of a matchup thing for me here. I don't really care about Marshawn Lattimore on this particular one because you have 2 alpha receivers on the same team here in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. For me, this is health-based. And again, if he logs 2 full practices and shows me, hey, I'm 100% ready to go, I've had no setbacks in my issue. In fact, I've progressed significantly throughout the week. Kudos to you, T. Higgins, and we'll cut down to 4 takes for this week if need be. But for T. Higgins here, this is a warning sign, a red flag. If he's not able to get open, he's going to have a quiet game, and it's just the nature of the beast. Health is such a concern here, something we should talk about more in these start-sit episodes, honestly, because, Amon-Ra St. Brown, that could have been predicted easily last week if, I actually didn't even expect him to play. The fact that he played surprised me, let alone the fact that, it was unsurprising when he was out there that he absolutely stunk, despite the fact that Detroit got wiped off the face of the earth. So, for T. Higgins, be cautious of that ankle. I'm very concerned about it here. And again, the week 5 snaps indicate how that really bothered him. He didn't undress or, take his helmet off ever. He was sitting there on the sideline, but never re-entered that contest. So to recap, DJ Moore at Los Angeles, Jeudy taking on the Chargers, Alan Lazard at home against the Jets, Drake London at home against the 49ers, and Higgins on the road here against New Orleans, my 5 sit wide receivers for Week 6 fantasy action. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, drop down, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new around here. I appreciate you guys sticking with me in today's episode. Check out our Week 6 fantasy playlist with other start-sit content and information and other trade advice videos from this week as well. So thanks so much, guys. I will see you next time. Peace out.